So now, Hannes, we're at the discussion session, which proud to say we're only 6 minutes behind schedule, which I think is pretty dang good. So I'd invite all of the presenters back up to the front of the virtual room, as it were. And while we recollect our thoughts, I do want to take a moment to just, again, remind everyone that we do have this opportunity for poster session tomorrow. Poster session is going to start at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and again in the GatherTown virtual environment that we all enjoyed earlier today. So with that, I guess we'll just open the floor for questions from the gathered throngs of 143 of our nearest and dearest friends here.
I can kick this off with asking a question to Nandita, actually. So do you also plan to incorporate Earth visibility as one of your parameters for assessing site selection? Just because, especially in those areas, you might have interferences with some of the large massifs on the other side of Shackleton that might obstruct Earth.
Yeah, I mean, we did look at Earth visibility maps, and you're absolutely on point that we do have those issues. But again, if as in the previous talks, the senior scientists like Dr. Carly Peters and Dr. Brad Jolliffe suggested, we have like a more continuous communication than and like a better, and as we have, like, we are getting better and better at preparing elimination resolution, like elimination maps, then that wouldn't be much of an issue.
Thanks, Nandita. I can keep going. I have another question for Brent in this case. Brent Gary.
I also see that Jim's hand is up, so why don't we do?
It is.
Why don't we turn it to the floor for Jim's hand, and then Hannes, we can go to your question for Brent.
I actually had one for Brett too. I was thinking, really interested in, just thinking about your definition of outcrops. So, you know, some of those boulder clusters look really interesting, but how do you distinguish, you know, secondary cluster boulders at low velocity or exhumed from those that are defined as outcrops? Be really fantastic to see outcrops, but I'm not sure where they're coming from. So it'd be great.
Yeah, some things for outcrops, it's just kind of either bright albedo face and no real shadows, kind of see maybe a little bit raised. It could be something that's buried, in all honesty, or it's a bright albedo face in the wall or cavity of like a crater. So something is exposed or protruding out, but it doesn't look like there's something just sitting on the surface, like what would be a boulder with like a nice long shadow, unless it's kind of a raised feature with a little bit of a shadow. So again, it's a little subjective, and I like to go through and just make sure everything's kind of consistent with the definition at some point before it's released. But yeah, so it's trying to distinguish between them is can be a little difficult. Depends on the resolution too.
Yeah, it'd be really great to get that map, and because this could be the key between linking, you know, like for example, impact melt deposits, for example, that are likely to be coherent with other ejecta material, et cetera. So if you see anything in the crater walls or anything like that, that's really fantastic. I'd love to see more details. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on with Carolyn, who raised her hand as well. You're muted. Possibly your microphone is turned off because you're not muted in Zoom.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
I switched to a different microphone. So I wanted to kind of continue on about from what Jim was saying about the boulders. Kind of question for both you, Hannes, and also for Brent. Have you been able to say anything about, like, you have boulders that might have different compositions, or do they all look pretty much the same in terms of albedo, and are they just covered with dust?
Go ahead, Brent.
As far as like kind of composition or anything, it's still kind of difficult to tell. I just been looking at the NAC images. I haven't really compared it to anything else or any other data sets. The geomorphic map is kind of the closest thing we have to like a geologic map there. The geologic maps we have of that area is so broad that connecting it, they're just kind of connecting any of those features to much larger craters than the smaller ones that are there. But yeah, so I think now it kind of, once we have the data sets, going back and looking at the context of where are a lot of these things situated and what could they be? Could they be on the slope of impact melt? Is it something excavated from a deeper crater? Is it connected to Shackleton or something else? So those types of things we can start looking at.
Yeah, to follow up on that, as Brent has shown us so beautifully, is that those boulders just they're just a few pixels on NAC, and compositional data sets are very hard to come by, especially at these resolutions in the polar area. Now, and then as was already hinted, like the geology or the geographic context of those outcrops and boulder block locations are the best guess right now. For example, there's a very prominent field of 5 meter or more diameter block sitting right on the rim of Shackleton, which is right where my traverse, for example, would approach Shackleton, right where the connecting ridge touches Shackleton. And of course, we could theorize that those boulders might be blocks ejected by the Shackleton event and then deposited on the rim. But other than that, there's no boulder that I've looked at, maybe Brent, it shows any intrinsic texture because it's just 3, 4, 5 pixels. You can't see anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
not in
what I
the
was
site.
afraid of.
There's a couple larger exposures, and I see the comment from David Crane. There are a couple features that are outside the study area I showed that are impressive, and might have some cool scientific significance and context to go visit. But most of everything else is in that connecting ridge area that I mapped is a few meters to 5-10 meters wide for kind of the size of the boulders.
Carly has raised her hand as well. Take it away, Carly.
You're muted.
I'm still muted. You're still muted. Everybody's still muted. Sorry.
Okay. Hear me now. Okay. I want to come back to, we are so spoiled with Apollo. We had illumination galore. We could see scattered light in the shadows. Jack Schmidt up against the boulder, he could see what he was doing. We're not going to have that luxury at the South Pole. And we really need to be thinking about how we're going to deal with that. I'm concerned. The light level is just not what we're used to, and we've got to prepare for it.
That reminds me, Carly, that we actually have an opportunity to confer with members of the HEO management in 1 minute and 8 seconds as part of the quote office hours session from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time in conference room 1. And so, as we all think of issues and concerns, as you pointed out, Carly, I think it's good to that we consider what's actually happening right now at the planning for Artemis. How much would mounted lights contribute to, obviously, okay, we need to be able to work in areas that are shadowed. Let's not even think of permanently shadowed areas, but shadow of boulder, shadow of the lander, shadow of the spacesuit as well. And what operational constraints that will or will not be placed if we have, headlamps, basically. So it is a dynamic environment, but boy, is it going to be exciting to see, as David pointed out in the chat, astronauts meandering through those boulder fields that Hannes and Brent has pointed out.
Carolyn has raised her hand again, or is still raising it. I am not sure.
She may be stretching.
Just stretching out. Now she was saying, now she's getting shy. Okay. One tiny question maybe for Brent also. Have you considered just using an algorithm automatically plotting a line avoiding certain slopes amount, like let's say 10 degrees, and connecting as many blocks as you can? So like an ideal traverse, if it's just about the quantity of blocks now, just quantitatively speaking, not qualitatively, of course.
So kind of connecting the dots between blocks on like a low slopes,
Like,
and
yeah,
then
like
trying to
algorithm.
connect them as like to a path.
Yeah, like
I have not
connect
tried
as
that
many
yet.
as you can.
Yeah, that I have not tried yet. So, no. But it could be, you could kind of factor out DEM, kind of where those locations are, and then do kind of a little traverse plot in GIS, kind of just to see like a least cost path analysis that we were talking about. Kind of, you could mask out where those boulders are located or features are located, and then, constrain a pathway kind of set up in GIS to figure out which would be an optimal way to kind of go visit through them. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, and blocking out no-go areas that have unsuitable parameters like slopes beyond, let's say, 10 degrees, and certain earth and sun visibility parameters, and then just connect as many dots within the remaining area as possible. Sort of something like that, a pure quantitative approach. And yeah, Nandita is already commenting like Jocastra algorithms. Yeah, I know that there are algorithms like that out there. I was just wondering if you considered doing something like that.
I haven't gotten that far yet, and it's one of those things. Once I can release a data set, and then it's other people can do those kinds of fun studies with it too. So that's kind of part of why we're making the data set.
All right. Well, if there are any other questions, comments, concerns, we can discuss that now. As I said, there is the office hours that are being opened up for members of the forum to discuss anything with Jake Bleacher and Julie Robinson. And again, tomorrow and Friday, tomorrow and Thursday and Friday, we have other office hours with various members of both headquarters and community groups. So please take advantage of those office hours to talk, be discussed with, and raise questions. And thank you, Carolyn and Parvati, for entrusting Hannes and I in our ability to chair a session. I think it went extremely well. I'm really thrilled to see so many participants over the course of the course of the day. The question is raised about how do we get into office hours? If you go through the program is the best place to start, and I believe you have to go through the GatherTown forum to enter the conference rooms to meet with the members of the community. As was mentioned earlier today, or earlier in our session, we are of course meeting at the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, and if you head on over now to the indispensable Apollo in Real Time website, they are in powered descent. And so I will be happy to stay on and watch along in real time with anyone who wants to, because there's no greater joy than reliving experiences, happy experiences over and over and over again. So I think with that on my part, we'll conclude. Hannes?
Yeah, I have nothing more to add other than a big thank you to all our speakers for a bunch of really awesome talks. I was real thrilled. Yeah, so I don't see any more questions, neither raised hands nor in the chat. So we can call this a day.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone. We'll see you all either in the office hours or tomorrow morning at the start of day 2 of the Joint Survey Exploration Science Forum and European Lunar Science Symposium. Thank you.